Night in the Woods was a trip I don't think I'll ever forget. The beauty of the game is that everyone latches onto something differently through their playthrough. Whether it be the elements of religion, politics, economics, mental health, or paranormal experiences, there was something there for everyone. We each experienced the story differently. We resonated with the parts that spoke to us, and we may have overlooked the parts that didn't catch our eye. When I think about the game in general, it seems timeless. Something I can pick up 5 years from now and be transported back to that moment in my life, when the whole world was before me and I had no idea what to do or what I was meant to be. Stuck in a state of just existing. And I think many people live in a state like this every day. Sometimes things just feel absolutely pointless. We are racked with questions about our purpose and life in general. Being a small speck in a sea of stars, we feel tiny and insignificant. I think this is why Night in the Woods resonates with some of us so deeply. You have all these different intertwining themes underneath this overarching sense of existentialism. May, for example, continually asks herself what her purpose is. Religion and society do not decide this for her, and she constantly questions both. This definitely resonated with me deeply because I feel like people in general can only decide what life is about on an individual basis. Whenever I'm deeply reflecting on life, I often find myself beneath a starry sky. When I was younger, after my parents would go to bed and it was late at night, I would sneak out to the front porch and just stare into the stars above. There was a sense of comfort in doing so, and the world stood still. I think this is why I enjoy nighttime so much today. Knowing everyone around you is sleeping while you adventure through the night. You know, in history in general, people often turn to the stars for answers. Within the black sea of space, people often questioned everything they knew, and they wondered what was truly out there. It made your problems seem insignificant, and this has always been a part of human behavior. The town of Possum Springs was certainly no different, and the stars and constellations play such large roles in Night in the Woods. Like Angus states, we are pattern finders, and we pour our heart and minds into it. We look for things to rationalize our thinking, and hopefully point us in the right direction for the answers we are seeking about life. However, the answers are always fleeting, and we never quite get there. Yet, in the skies above Possum Springs, the stars tell a different story. Throughout the game, you are consistently introduced to new dusk stars through your neighbor Mr. Chazokov. Every other day, you join him in a starbound venture into uncovering the lore behind certain constellations. When you're just experiencing the story for the first time, a lot of these signs seem insignificant. It's neat to hear May reflect on her childhood in regards to the stars, but oftentimes after the task is done, we part ways and dive back into the heart of the story. However, these stars are more than just beautiful distractions. What if I told you everything in the game is paralleled in some ways to the stars above? If you really dive into the explanation of the stars, especially the dusk stars you discover with Mr. Chazokov, there are some underlying themes that are present. First and foremost, there's definitely a separation between the poor and the rich, and those who rose up to instill change. Stories like Dor the Murderer and Simone the Fighter come to mind, because wealth and status were contributing factors in the story unfolding. Dor was silent to the king, and the king mocked his silence, because more than likely everything about Dor's life was a result of the greed of the king. Dor's village, his family, and even his chickens all weren't as immaculate in comparison to how the king saw himself. So Dor took everything from the king by murdering the king's chickens, his entire village, and eventually his family, until the king was now the silent one. Which totally sounds super grim, but from Dor's perspective, or as May puts it, if you've been told that you are nothing before, Dor may seem like a hero. Unfortunately, some people in society look down upon others who aren't in the same class as them, and I think this reflects in the town of Possum Springs. The older generation is definitely set in their ways, and they view anyone who is not trying to save the town as ruffians. They despise those who are moving away, and are trying to breathe life into an area that is abandoned. Truthfully, the situation is silly because they themselves were abandoned as company owners closed their doors. The highway killed off small businesses because people had access to other areas. But the older generation was still stuck in their ways. However, evolution happens and clinging on to the ways of the past is an impossible fight. Take the story of Sterling the Seer, someone who once told the stories of the stars. Once an astronomer came along who expounded upon the patterns behind the stars, Sterling was kicked to the curb, as the king no longer had any use for them. Once their usefulness was gone, they were eliminated, much like the businesses around Possum Springs. Once technology had advanced, the many businesses around town eventually closed down. I remember the same exact thing happening to the town I grew up in. Abandoned buildings covering half the town that no longer served a purpose because they became obsolete. Jobs left the area and desolation set in. Once operations weren't profitable or made sense to keep there, the plug was pulled. Some say capitalism was at fault, while others argue that the times were simply changing. However, it was probably a combination of both. This same behavior was also mirrored in Possum Springs. The mines had tons of safety issues, but the profits for the owners overshadowed the risk of the workers. After all the profits had been made and technology had advanced, company owners closed down the operations and kicked the workers to the curb, similar to Sterling the Seer. The story behind the star runs parallel with the state of things within the town. But the town refused to die, much like the people shown in the stars. They resisted death, escaped death, refused to drown, and kept pushing on. I thought these things were interesting because for me, I thought they could be interpreted in two ways. One way is that the older generation is refusing to let the town die. They keep fighting on despite the world working against them, and resort to absurd means of sacrifice as a last resort to make things better. On the other hand, I also think of those fighting for change. Those who stand up and oppose the established society because they feel change is more important than their life. And while the stars depict them as not dying, I believe it is their voice that lingers on that is not forgotten. Such is the case of Quinoa, who I believe that metaphorically shows that what occurred between her and the king can never be forgotten. It simply can't be erased because of one's influence in society, and will be a testament to everything she stood for. And these things are really only the beginning. We have the Big Snake constellation, which is a reference to the highway, which was built through the area, which strangles all the towns it's around. May even makes a remark about this. With a highway, people no longer had to stop in Possum Springs because they had a direct route to the larger cities. Cut off from the world, the town began to die. And we also have Ivan the first singer. And for those of you who watched my previous videos, we know Ivan is a reference to the black goat at the end of the game. Then the biggest clue of all, the fish constellation. Actually, it's just a fish. I really got nothing for that one. This astral connection in the sky above isn't the only one offering context. The astral projection within the game itself tells just as much as the stars in the sky do. May's dreams appear to be more than just dreams, and in some ways lean more into the paranormal side of things due to containing things she knew nothing about. They were essentially like the Christmas Carol, showcasing the events of the past, present, and future of Possum Springs. While it's possible for May to know some of these things about the town, stuff like the musicians definitely feel like the dreams included things she had yet to understand. It was as if this place was a town of ghosts and gods that would be there until the end of time. The spirit world version of Possum Springs to some degree. We are given visions of the past, from May's time spent at college to the great flood that swept across the land. We then have our version of the Ghosts of Christmas Future, who assumes the role of a cat-like god where May unloads her uncertainties. All of this paints a picture of just how much influence the stars have in the story. Just like in real life, the story turns to the stars for its symbolism and mystery. They serve as guidance for helping shape the ideas behind Night in the Woods, as you're smothered by a thought-provoking existential blanket that leaves you wanting to know more. But that's also part of the magic itself. We may never have an answer to everything going on in Night in the Woods, but to me, the search is half the fun. So, just like in real life, we are stuck gazing into the cosmos, reflecting upon ourselves. And I'm totally okay with that. This is why Night in the Woods will be something I will never forget. But now that I dumped that on all of you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the constellations all mean at their core? Do you have your own theories for specific constellations and how they influence the story? Are there any characters that you directly parallel to these stars? Let me know in the comments below, as this video has only scratched the surface of this topic. Also, my buddy Loxton just produced a video about Night in the Woods, in relation to the politics and economics around Possum Springs. I highly recommend you swing over to his channel to give it a gander. You can find a link at the end of the video. And with that, thanks for tuning into this analysis of the stars above. If you'd like to join me on my YouTube voyage and continue to uncover the secrets behind Possum Springs, then the subscribe button is just what you're looking for. Thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers. If you like this video, perhaps you'll enjoy some of my others. There's a slew of other theories on this channel too, so regardless, I hope you enjoy.